Here we go, record. Okay, beep, 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 beep. Hello and welcome to a very first for the EDI Jester timeline, my first interview. And I'm very pleased to welcome to us today Elder DeVille from Iceland. And as you can see, we've got the background here is a tribute to that fantastic country. And it's like the Iceland connection, which is the French connection, but colder. So without further ado, Elder, welcome.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for having me.
That's okay. You're more than welcome. Do you want to give our viewers a bit of a breakdown about who you are and what you're up to?
Well, my name is Elder DeVille, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Icelandic chapter, if you like, of the LGB Alliance. We have rebranded ourselves to Samtökin 22, which is, well, our main aim and objective is to be a watchdog for LGBT for gay rights in Iceland. So we are actually just a watchdog for gay rights in Iceland.
Okay.
We just wanted to keep it very, very simple. And Iceland is quite captured in gender ideology in all stages of governance, all from local authority up, all the way up, and all the institutions and everything. It's quite a bit mess that needs to be sorted out sooner rather than later.
Okay, so yes, I mean, it's a story that we hear elsewhere. It's a very similar story. You can always see the pattern of the template, can't you, of these ne'er-do-wells is used wherever they go. So do you have any specific examples, perhaps, that would give us some viewers some insight into what exactly is happening in Iceland? Well,
what happened in Iceland in 2019 is that there was a legislation, an act of sexual autonomy that was whispered through parliament without any meaningful discussions or debate, which actually allows self-ID and opens up, single-sex spaces and provisions for women, well, and men, but it's mainly the women who are sort of the more vulnerable group in all of this. So effectively, you can just register as a woman, and then you legally are a woman, and there's no hurdles. There are no safeguarding steps or nothing, so it's quite easy. And also, what is happening now? Well, that's now there's another bill before Parliament in Iceland, which is absolutely absurd, and this serves, as a warning to other countries that are introducing self-ID or have introduced self-ID, because our Stonewall / Mermaid equivalent organization in Iceland, they have like a board of interesting types, let's just say, that have been making up new or blather up new words, and I use the word blather because it's what it is.
Blather.
So blather, yeah, blah 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 blah, because that's what it is. And in January last year, this Stonewall equivalent organization produced a word list with new blather words that they had created. It's like a group of 5-6 people that sat together and blathered up those words. And so they've come up with terms equivalent to man and woman and boy and girl, but gender neutral, non-binary terms. I refuse to utter those words because I don't want to give those words any weight. So I intentionally do not mention the words in any of my writings or any of my speeches or anything. But what they are doing now is the Pirate Party and one lesbian MP for the sister party of the Lib Dems they have put forward changes of, a few laws where they are actually adding those blather words into the statute books. And that's a very dangerous territory, because if you start, giving this blather any weight in the statute books, it becomes even more difficult to sort of clean up this ideological mess.
I think you make an excellent point there in terms of the temporal nature of what is occurring. If you consider the illegality or the criminality of homosexuality in Britain, it was 100 years. It took us 100 years to overturn it. So once these things get into statute, it becomes much harder. I'm just to give us some a sort of flavor of and a framework. Perhaps you could just mention for some of the Jesterites that are watching. Do we have? It's a small country. Can you just give us an idea about the sort of size of the constituencies?
It is a very small country. I mean, the country has 385,000 people living there, and the parliament has 63 MPs. So capturing policy is relatively quite easy, because you will only need a majority of 32 to have a legislation passed before parliament. And yeah, so that's quite easy.
I mean, yes, the size obviously happens. I mean, you mentioned about, places that have already done this. We're seeing problems in Ireland. We're seeing problems in Malta. I mean, it's obvious that once this happens, there can be issues that become major around it. Would you describe Iceland as a liberal country, and in what way?
Iceland is quite a liberal country. Yes, I mean, gay rights advanced quite quickly, in the late 90s, beginning of noughties, and equal marriage was introduced in the legislation back in 2008, and you can see that our organization in Iceland had the same existential crisis as Stonewall got back in 2015. So and we have to be honest here. I mean, working, civil rights movement, it's a money-making machine as well. So we just have to be honest about that. And obviously these organizations were not ready to let's say scale down their activities or anything like that. So they did change or transform their way of working. When I was coming out as gay, the organization used to have beer nights where you could go out, to their headquarters, and they had a little bar with, fridge with beers and, maybe something else or whatever, and an access to a library where you could get gay literature and just meet other people. Now, the main objective of the organization seems to be a kindergarten facility for children who are saying that that they might not be a girl or might not be a boy because they've seen the genderbread person.
So again, we're seeing this very familiar pattern there, Elder. I'm intrigued because I don't know whether you know this, but Candace Owen released a new documentary recently called The Greatest Lie Ever Sold. And what she's exposed there is the absolute link between Black Lives Matters and the trans and queer hard left movement. Now, I saw
it yesterday. I saw a part of it yesterday. I haven't dug properly into it. I just haven't had the time, but I definitely will dig into it. I saw that there were some mentioning of some trans children organization that have received $200,000 and more.
Yeah.
So that's something that is worth exploring.
Yeah, there's definitely a link there. So, and on the back of that, I'm then intrigued to ask you a couple of questions. First off, the one that I'd like to ask is, what was the situation for women in Iceland? Are you an egalitarian society?
We are indeed a very egalitarian society, and we were actually the first country in the world to democratically elect a female president. And we, in my lifetime, we've had at least 2 or 3 mayors of Reykjavik who have been female. We have had two women prime ministers. And just in the span of the last 15 years, both of them have been, 2 women prime ministers. And half of the parliament is women, and so the situation for women in Iceland is pretty good. However, the feminist movement in Iceland is uncomfortably silent about what's going on. But the Iceland Women's Association has actually taken Trans Iceland in as a associate, with giving them an associate membership of their movement. So that movement is completely captured by trans activism.
So do you see, I mean, that's a follow-up to that one before I move on with my next question after that is, I would then have to ask, are there feminists in Iceland working currently who are looking to the UK and Turf Island,
Yes,
as it's so fantastically known, who are looking to the work of women in the UK to perhaps bring that kind of activism to Iceland? Are you seeing movement in that way?
yes, I do. However, because Iceland is very, very small, it's very, very difficult to speak up against this, because you get an absolute onslaught in both media and chat forums. I mean, it's worth to mention, while we're talking, I actually do not live in Iceland. I actually do live in the UK. And the reason for I'm being sort of fronting this movement and have been fronting this for the last 2 years is exactly because I'm not in the country, so they can't take anything away from me. I'm like, they can try come after me, they can't. They have nothing, to take away from me. I'm comfortably married, and I do my own thing, so they can't. They have nothing to take away from me. So
Yeah,
I'm very happy to be. I'm very happy to be that pipe that blows out the smoke for the others.
yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting, because I think you're the first person in reality I've met who is geographically distant enough to cause trouble, because most people are causing trouble because they've lost something. If you look at what happened particularly to Kathleen Stock, for example, or the
Yeah,
LGB Alliance in the UK, who's inspired you to do the LGB Alliance in Iceland, you can see that normally it's that removal you talk about. Well, that's interesting because you're geographically far enough away for them not to be able to touch you, which is great news. It makes you a powerful force. So from that perspective, we're
yes,
seeing.
it does. For example, last week I was in Iceland, and I dropped a few truth bombs, and I'm about to go again and drop some truth bombs, whilst I'm there. But yeah, my pen is my sword, and funny enough, I was actually having a discussion with a journalist yesterday, because I wrote a piece that was published day before yesterday, and it caused a bit of hoo-ha, and it was just a simple piece on that legislation where you are going to where the parliament wants to put into law this bladder words, because what I said in the article was the parliament indeed has the legislative power, but it doesn't have the power to define material reality.
Yes, I mean
So parliament is actually surpassing itself in their powers, because if they're going to legislate for something that doesn't exist, they don't have they don't have that power to define material reality.
yes, I think I mean that
And
is another indicator of this particular method of thinking, and the way that these people are is this attempt to redefine material reality, which we see all the time. So I
of
think
course
that
it is. It's of course it is.
I would like to ask. I mean, I don't know whether you have much information about this or whether you were in Iceland at the time. What was the effect of Black Lives Matter on Iceland? Because if Candice is right, there's a link between them and this distinct rise in the movement of this ideology and funding.
I think it. I think it. I would say next to none. I mean, you would have the social justice warriors going like, Black Lives Matter, blah blah blah. But overall, it's just not something that the average Icelander or the Icelandic people are paying any notice to, really.
Okay, well, that's very interesting, because that means that this is actually, as well as being part of BLM, is working independently in its own right, in terms of once you get outside of America. The move that the British people have made, well, the British women in particular, and now we're seeing more men come forward, but the women who have laid the groundwork, not just for the UK, but I think for the world, in showing the kind of activism and the kind of work that can be done. Means that people who have gone through this legislative process and have not been able to stop it, like the Brits have, can take some succor from that. There is some succor they can take from it, and it does provide a template for people. Do you think that anything that's happened in Turf Island is particularly effective at awakening people in Iceland?
Yes. I think yes, I would say yes. However, Iceland is just a couple of years or a few years ahead of what's been going on what's been going on in the UK. The thing is, Iceland should have woken up way earlier, and maybe it's a bit my fault, because I'm one voice, and I could have started uttering my words sooner, because I started noticing back in 2015. 16 what was going on. I saw that new homophobia starting to flourish. I was seeing posts by trans activists where my sexuality was being watered down to genitalia fetish, etc., and I could have started speaking out properly back then, but I didn't. But it was when those laws were passed where I thought, hang on a minute, now we are in really, really muddled water. And I just like, I couldn't keep it for myself anymore, because I could see the absurdity and the territory that we were going into. And this concept of trans children and medicalizing, gender nonconformity in youth, that doesn't sit well with me, because I'm one of those boys who used to play with dolls and wanted to dress, in skirts and dresses when I was 3-4 years old, and the same with my youngest sister, who is 1 year older than me. She was a tomboy, and she's a happily married lesbian woman today.
You echo, I think, a story that many gay men would just simply say,
I think
yeah,
we all have a
me.
story like that.
It's a profound attack upon gender non-conforming individuals, whoever they may be. And yes, it's a story that resonates with many gay men about this exploration of play with the idea of feminine and masculine. And I think that's been something that's been part of the gay youth for forever, quite frankly. I mean, it's always been, that kind of, I thought I was Barbara Streisand in Hello Dolly, or Audrey Hepburn, or whatever it may be. Those iconic figures that have led gay people to play in that way, or for non-conforming girls or non-conforming boys to be able to express themselves without, as you have said, which I think is the most important thing, being medicalized. Now we're now seeing that medicalization occur across the board. Do you think that when you look at the British situation, the UK situation, from where you are, in the UK, obviously, but as somebody who is Icelandic born, do you see that we're making headway, or do you think we're in deep trouble?
No, I think we are doing well here, and I am very optimistic for what is happening here. And it's also made me question a bit my own activism in Iceland, because I've been thinking maybe I'm just wasting my breath, because if we win this in the United States and in the United Kingdom, the rest will follow suit. I mean, this nonsense comes from here. This nonsense is born and bred in the English-speaking world. The English-speaking world needs to fix this. When we fixed it, the rest will follow, because this ideology can't withstand any scrutiny or the light of day. The more it's on the surface, the better, because the more it's there, the easier it is for people to realize how fucking nuts it is.
Yes, I think.
Do you know what I mean?
We'll go with fucking nuts. That's
Yeah.
it's fucking nuts.
And I think people, well, I actually know people are realizing this more and more, because I can feel it. I can, there are more people contacting me. There are more people telling me stories. I have parents from school sending me communications from the Icelandic schools, and even youth in Iceland. We're talking about people in children in school age 14, 15, when the mermaids slash Stonewall organization are in school. They are so fed up that quite a few of them are actually standing up and leaving and walking out on these out on these rainbow sessions, because I mean they're puking rainbows when they come home.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happens. I mean, I think it's important to mention. I'm going to bring us to a close shortly, Elder, but I think it's important to mention that parents can, and we must be very grateful for the work of the likes of Sex Matters, Transgender Trend. And when it comes to prisons, Keep Prisons Single Sex, and Stats for Gender, and all of these organizations who provided and do collate resources that can be very helpful. And I've used some of those. I've sent those to my warrior teachers, because you're aware of the warrior teacher program that I'm doing currently.
I am.
I've just got off the phone this morning with a couple of them about what can we do
Good.
about X. We're always having those conversations, and I think it's important to continue doing them. But what I'd like to leave our Jesterites with, if I can, is where can they find you, Elder? How do they find you? I'll put it all into the Dubris. It'll go.
Yeah, I mean, they
thingy,
can find me. They can find personally. They can find me on Twitter as Just Gay Eyes.
Yeah.
And the organization that I lead, you can find it on @samtoikin22. I'll spell that for you so you can put it onto there. And obviously on Facebook, and Facebook as well.
Okay.
I mean, we are not on Instagram or anything like that yet,
People keep telling me I need to get on Instagram and TikTok, and I keep saying no, I really don't.
No.
So I'm intrigued. Do you have any intentions of? Do you have a blog? Is the first thing. Do you have a blog that you write?
Well, I do write, and I write to a relatively small news outlet in Iceland. And the good thing about that news outlet, it has a translation bar on top. So it translates into, I think, 8 different languages, but be aware, it's a little bit Google Translate thing. Yeah. I write in Icelandic, but the translation can be a little bit distorted, especially when we come to gender ideology. It translates it to sexology, because unfortunately gender and sex is the same word in Icelandic, and that's why we're in this mess.
Yeah,
we can't distinguish between them properly, because they are synonyms.
Yes, I mean, this occurs in other languages as well. I'm quite intrigued by the idea of being able to see it from the perspective of Iceland. I think will be important to help people see the global nature of this. I think that's one of the first things I'd mention.
Yes, I mean, the most recent thing that I'm working on now is, yesterday there was a lecture for teaching students, who are getting master's degree in education. They were taught, or they had the lecture yesterday where the genderbread person was taught as affects. Yeah. I mean, honestly.
So this inculcation into education is now, it's happening.
Yeah.
You know that they're in India as well. They've got into India, Stonewall.
Yeah. Stonewall, I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. I think we're going to have to come to the point where we're going to wrap it up, right? So I've got one last question. One last question for you, Elder, if I may. How the devil do we get more gay men off the bench?
I think they are slowly getting up from the bench and coming. I can see that myself in Iceland. Many gay men have started to realize, like, hang on, where am I in all of this? Where's the joy? Where's the gay pride? Where's this? And they are starting to wake up. But unfortunately, with gay men and probably lesbians as well, mostly gay men, I mean, in general, we're just so intellectually fucking lazy, I mean, we are intellectually lazy as a tribe. I mean, honestly, but hopefully that will change. But the thing is, it's not only gay men who have been intellectually lazy. It's everyone. we want to have information spoon-fed, and critical thinking has just gone downhill over the last couple of decades. So
yeah, certainly
that is something that needs changing. So I would just say, to gay men, I mean, come on. I mean, the lesbians helped us out in a great measure when we had the crisis with AIDS and HIV. This is an existential threat to them, and it's actually payback time, and we owe them.
We do. Okay. I'm gonna bring it to a close there, Elder. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
You're very welcome.
Jesterites will appreciate your insight and your candor about the situation in Iceland. I'm just going to remind them of the Warrior Teacher program. Come and be a Warrior Teacher. Then we can do what Elder says, which we can bloody well make people smarter. Let's get some critical thinking going on.
Absolutely.
And also you can join my Patreon. You can buy me a coffee. Everything to do with Elder and what Elder's up to, I'll put in the doobries, which will be in the description of the doobries, right? Okay. So Elder, what can I say? Thank you so much for taking the time. It's great to see you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And perhaps we could do this again another time.
Absolutely. I'm game.
Thank you, Elder. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.